So in full disclosure, I did not know that I was working in the adult industry. I honestly thought when I got this job, I was doing something else. What's up, y'all? It's your boy DJ Richie Sky here on the Richie in Real Life channel, where we talk travel, lifestyle, and motivation. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about something that a lot of you guys asked me about from our previous video, and that is my work in the adult film industry. So in order for me to really tell you guys the story, I kind of have to start at the beginning. As you guys know, I moved from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles to pursue a career in, entertainment, specifically to further my DJing career and to do some other things in the entertainment industry as well. So during my time there, I also talked about how, I struggled with finances and I struggled with finding work. But you guys can check out another video that I'll link in the description down below for more on that journey, okay? So this story pretty much starts with me looking for another full-time job. I was bartending, serving at the time at a restaurant in West Hollywood. And from there, I was like, I need to up this financial situation because when you live in Los Angeles, you will likely struggle at some point because, people who go there are usually chasing their dreams. And sometimes when you're chasing your dreams, you have to forego security in order to get to the next level. And so that's what I did. So I was in a very uncomfortable situation financially, and I knew that I needed to get my money up, okay? And for those of you guys who don't know, I used to be a DJ, so I was DJing on some weekends, doing some events here and there, but it really wasn't enough to sustain a living. I was also doing a little bit of, influencing, but it also was not enough to make a living, and it wasn't really consistent. So I ended up running across this ad on Craigslist, and I know some of you guys may be like, Craigslist, I don't know about that. But what I will tell you is sometimes you can find some really good ads on Craigslist for some jobs. At least you could back at that point in time. Now, right now, I don't know. But back then, yes. I mean, there were opportunities for acting, for all types of things on Craigslist if you look. So I ran across this ad for a producer role. And so I got excited about it because as I began to read about this, job opportunity, I was like, oh yes, it's in Hollywood, like perfect location. I said, this is right up my alley, given everything that I had done up until that point when I lived in Los Angeles. I had done other news shows. I had done, production work. I had even pitched shows at this point. So for me, I knew that I had what it took to do this position. And it was for a live streaming company. Now, for reasons that I really won't go into at this moment, I will not disclose the name of that company. I may do so at a later date because I actually want to investigate this idea of how many of us didn't know that we were working in the adult industry or adult industry adjacent for quite some time, okay? So I get an interview. I send in my resume, I get an interview. And so what I do at that point is, I'm taking things to the next level for my interview. I have created like a 30-page, I think it was like a slide deck, and I had it all printed out. I pitched to them basically what I would do in the position. and how I would move the organization forward. Now, to give you guys some perspective, this was a live streaming organization, and in the ad, it was for a producer role for, you know, artists and musicians. And again, my background is in music, DJing. This is a surefire way for me to get in the industry and make an impact, because at that time, there was no BIGO. People weren't really doing, you know, going live on YouTube as much as they are now. You know, live streaming wasn't the way that it was at that point. And so I knew going into this, live streaming was going to be the next wave. So going into a live streaming company and being able to work with artists and musicians and entertainers was right up my alley, because that's basically what the ad was calling for. So for me as a producer, I'm thinking, okay, so what we can do is, you know, we will stage these musicians this way. We will help them earn income, because I'm gonna be honest with you guys, the ad and the company overall, what they had in mind for artists and musicians based on the ad, was really something very novel at the time. And I knew that they could be the next wave for the way that artists and entertainers could earn a living. So I pitched my ideas and everything. I leave. Now this should have been a red flag right at the onset. The person who interviewed me was like, I don't want to call him the president of the company, but he was the highest ranking official in the company in Los Angeles, because the company itself was based out of another country. So you got to look at that whole picture right there. The company is technically based in Europe. However, this office was in LA. Now, in the interview, I had no clue that they did anything outside of what I was there for. I was there for a role as a producer for live streaming, and that's it, okay? So, red flag number one, I actually left the interview and the guy did not say a word to me the entire time. Somebody else was doing the talking and asking me questions, but the head guy basically handed me back my presentation that I had spent all weekend working on and was like, thank you. So I was like, you're not going to even keep my ideas that I worked so hard on to present to you? I didn't say it out loud. I just said thank you and, you know, thank you for your time, and then I was out. But I was thinking to myself, like, y'all not going to take my stuff? So anyway, I get the job. Shockingly enough, I get the job. So I start like a week later. I get to the job, and it's a very interesting situation. The office is bombed. They have valet parking. There's a bar inside. It has this open concept. The bar was locked until they had events. But when they did have events, I mean, these events were top of the line. Like, business was booming at first, okay? So when I get there, you walk into the office space. There's this it's a huge layout. It's very open. You can work from any other of the side conference rooms. And they even had like this little deck built into, like an amphitheater built into the facility where you could go up the stairs and work on the deck. Then they also had this other area where all the artists were behind the curtain, right? So in this area were like tons of live streaming stations with like little walls around them, and each artist or musician or painter or comedian was at their individual workstation, and they were live streaming themselves on the platform, and they would do that for about 8 hours out of a day. Now, there were 3 shifts for the artists, so some artists would come in the morning, some in the mid-afternoon, and some would work overnight. And then you had line producers who would essentially manage the streams for each of those artists, and they would sit back there in the room behind the curtain and manage that entire process. I'm telling you guys, like, it seemed very strange, but what they had in mind was actually genius at the time. It could have been genius, okay? Let me say that. Now, I was hired as a producer, which was, I guess, a role above the line producer. So I was not back there with the artist managing the streams. My job was to help the artist develop a way to make their 8 hours behind the live streaming camera entertaining. Now, I'm gonna tell you guys like this. If you've ever been an artist or musician or a comedian, you will know that performing for 8 hours out of a day is probably not reasonable. It's not reasonable. Like, who would want to do that and then get like a 30-minute lunch break or hour-long lunch break? That sounds ludicrous. Now, when I look back on it, I'm like, why was they doing that? Like, but these artists were coming in and they were making money. And the great thing about it was they could also make money from tips, right? So people could be watching them and interacting with them, and they could provide them with monetary tips. So the artists were making their base salary and they were making the tips as commissions, right? So it was really a dope setup, except for the amount of hours that the artists were supposed to work. So anyway, as I'm there, my job sort of changes, and they put me in an A&R position where I would audition talent. So talent would be coming in like for about 4 or 5 hours out of a day, and I'm sitting listening to people come in, sing, do their poetry, do their comic routines. I'm auditioning, like people are coming in, and it's like a steady stream of artists coming in. So when you're working there, you're not only working in an open space, but there's at any point in time, somebody will be singing at the top of their lungs, at the top of the stairs, okay, on the deck, where I was auditioning people, and then behind the curtain, you had a whole bunch of shenanigans going on in terms of the people performing for the cameras, right? So crazy setup though. It was a crazy setup. And at first, again, it seemed like the wave, man. But as I began to notice, like, really, I felt like they weren't interested in progression. It seemed like they just continued to want to be a stagnant company, because anytime someone presented ideas for pushing the envelope to really get this thing moving out in the general public, it felt like there was some resistance to doing so. Not to mention, it wasn't long before I started to look around at some of the other section of employees and their desks. Because it's open, you can see pretty much what everybody is working on. And so there's one team that was near the back of the facility that were working on other things. So they would be working on the tech for each of the streams for the artist to ensure that everything was working and flowing properly. Now, I will tell you, this office was one of many around the world, okay? And what do I mean by that? Well, in other spaces, they had other facilities where people could come in and live stream themselves. What I later found out was that some of these other facilities housed studios for people who wanted to do other things outside of being an artist per se. I guess if you're taking your clothes off, that's still artistry. I don't know. It's entertainment. So, I mean, I guess it falls under the same thing. So these people were live streaming themselves, and you could do it from home too. As long as you could set up your stream, you could do it from home. So these people would be, entertaining people, cleaning up their homes and stuff like that. It felt like a live OnlyFans or something like that, where the people could, and this is no disrespect to the company. I'm not speaking disparagingly about the company or OnlyFans. I'm just telling you, I did not know I was working in the adult film industry, or at least adult film adjacent, because the company under a different branch was showcasing people that would, take off their clothes and show the people who they were live streaming to, and the people could give them tips, okay? So I said, oh, I've didn't know y'all managed this in this department over here. I didn't realize it. And once you really get into it and you start walking around that back area, you will notice that on the screen at any given point in time, you might see somebody walking around naked or whatever. Now, I don't know exactly what the people was doing outside of being naked. I don't know. All I know is they would be having conversations with people on the internet, and then the people would give them money, okay, for tips. Now, I don't know what you got to do to get a tip. I mean, maybe you didn't have to do nothing, but that's how it worked. So they had a couple of divisions. This new one was for artists and entertainers and musicians and comedians and people who wanted to make a name for themselves. They had developed actually a great concept for people who were in that side of the industry, because they had modeled it after people who were doing more adult things on that side. Now, I gotta tell you, maybe it was easier for you to walk around taking your clothes off for 8 hours out of a day, I don't know, than it is for you to, you know, perform and sing for 8 hours out of a day. But because that model was not sustainable, to be honest with you. But the people was doing it. They were doing it. Now, eventually, you know, for me, what we started to notice was there began to be a high turnover rate for artists, you know, because again, you're getting burnt out. And then for some reason, the company started laying off or letting go some of the artists that had been there for quite some time, and then cycling in new artists. And that became sort of the theme as time went on, that they would bring in new people, cycle out the old people, and then they started to do these layoffs, and people, you know, would go missing in the office and you would just never hear from them again. And people just stopped showing up to work. And at one point in time, well, I won't go into that because I feel like I don't want to get in any trouble or anything like that, but it just felt like something was happening and the organization began to downsize at a very, very rapid pace. So much to the point that there was this one guy who knew they were coming for him to let him go, that he started running from office to hide from the people so they would not be able to get in contact with him to let him go. Because there had been at one point in time someone who had just stopped showing up to work, but she was still getting paid. Nobody knew that she just wasn't showing up to work anymore. It was a very strange operation. I will tell you something that I learned from it though. I learned that content is key for anything that you want to do. Again, they had a beautiful concept at the beginning. Get on live, get yourself out there, develop your own content, and then take that and do something with it on your own, because that's what a lot of these artists did. I don't know if you guys have heard of Boots Durango, but he's one of the artists that I auditioned while I was there in Los Angeles at that company. And listen, they did not want Boots in that building, but Boots came in there and turned it out, okay? He turned it out, and he really had developed a great template for how to own your own content as you move forward. So once he left, he actually became even more successful because he took that concept and he made it his own, jumped on the gram and social media and started doing the doggone thing, okay? So it really was a space where I met some amazing artists. I did some amazing things. I just didn't know that I was working in an industry or kind of working adjacent to the adult film industry. It was an interesting time, man. And again, I learned a lot. I also learned that sex sells a lot, because these artists, well, these entertainers, they made a lot of money, okay? They made a lot of money. I mean, the money was rolling in for these people. So I'm gonna tell y'all, if I didn't learn anything else at that time, I learned that sex definitely sells. So I can definitely understand these people that are on the OnlyFans and all these other platforms out there doing the doggone thing. I'm not hating on them because I'm sure they eating good. Now it ain't for me, but I'm sure they are eating real good. So that is my story of working somewhat in the adult film industry. I ended up getting laid off from the company, similar to a lot of other people. I was not mad at it. I was over it at that point. We were no longer really doing what I thought I was there to do. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. To each his own. No judgment zone here, but that's my story. And I thought I would share it with you guys because a lot of you guys have been asking about my time in that industry, working unbeknownst to myself, okay? So listen, if you enjoy stories like this, again, motivation, I will tell you that to come from that space and then to get to the space that I'm at now and having my own content online, that's probably the biggest lesson that I got from that. So if I will say one thing about this, the things that you do now and the things that you go through now are really usually a stepping stone for the next place that God will have you to go. So if you could take a lesson from it, take that lesson from that. And make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Hit that notification bell button and I will catch you in the next video.